My sister unwrapped the expensive watch I bought and announced to the table, "He always pays for everything." So I smiled, disputed the charge the next morning, and watched her try to explain a bank fraud notice to everyone at brunch. I, 32M, have always been the responsible one. The fixer. The person everyone calls when they need money, advice, or someone to clean up their mess. My sister has been the opposite for as long as I can remember. Impulsive, entitled, and completely oblivious to how her actions affect anyone else. Our parents enabled her behavior for years, always making excuses, always smoothing things over. I learned early on that keeping the peace meant swallowing my frustration and writing another check. But there's only so much a person can take before something breaks. The incident that finally pushed me over the edge happened during our family's annual holiday gathering. My parents hosted it at their house like always, inviting everyone. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole extended circus. I showed up with gifts for everyone, carefully selected and wrapped. I'd spend hours choosing the right presents because that's what I do. I care. I put in effort. My sister arrived late, as usual, empty-handed except for her boyfriend and an attitude that could cut glass. She walked in complaining about traffic, about how exhausting her week had been, about how she barely had time to breathe. Nobody called her out on showing up without gifts. Nobody ever did. Dinner was the usual affair, loud conversations, too much food, my mother fussing over everyone. I sat at the table, making small talk, listening to my father tell the same stories he tells every year. My sister held court at the other end, laughing too loudly, dominating every conversation, making everything about her. Her boyfriend sat beside her looking uncomfortable, probably wondering what he'd gotten himself into. After dinner came the gift exchange. Everyone gathered in the living room, and the pile of presents under the tree slowly dwindled as packages were opened and admired. I watched my nieces and nephews tear into their gifts with genuine joy, and for a moment, I felt like all the effort had been worth it. Then my sister opened my gift to her. I'd bought her an expensive watch, sleek, designer, something she'd mentioned wanting months ago during a random conversation. I remembered because I always remember those little details. The watch cost me nearly $2,000, but I figured she was my sister. Family mattered. I wanted her to have something nice. She pulled off the wrapping paper and opened the box. Her eyes widened when she saw the watch, and for a second, I thought I saw genuine appreciation. Then she lifted it up, holding it high so everyone could see, and announced to the entire room that I always pay for everything. The words hung in the air like a slap. She said it with this mixture of mock gratitude and condescension, as if she were doing me a favor by accepting my generosity. She turned to her boyfriend and made some comment about how I was basically the family ATM, always there to bankroll whatever anyone needed. A few people laughed uncomfortably. My mother tried to redirect the conversation. My father just shook his head and went back to his drink. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. My sister kept going, making jokes about my wallet, about how lucky everyone was to have me around to foot the bill. She was performing, and she had an audience. Some of my relatives chuckled nervously. Others looked away, embarrassed on my behalf. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, nodded, and let her have her moment. Inside, something cold and hard was crystallizing in my chest, a decision forming that would change everything between us. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I went through the motions, thanking people for gifts I'd received, helping my mother clean up in the kitchen, making polite conversation with relatives I barely knew. My sister strutted around showing off her new watch, making sure everyone saw it, making sure everyone knew it came from me. She kept circling back to the same theme, her generous brother, always ready to spend money on his family. I left the party early, claiming I had work the next day. My mother hugged me goodbye, whispering that I shouldn't take my sister's comments personally, that she didn't mean anything by it, that she was just joking around. I told my mother I understood, that everything was fine. I kissed her cheek and walked out to my car. The drive home gave me time to think. To really think about the years of enabling, the countless times I'd bailed my sister out of financial trouble, the loans I'd given her that were never repaid, the rent payments I'd covered, the credit card bills I'd paid off. I thought about every time she'd taken my generosity for granted, every time she'd made me feel like a sucker for caring about family. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The next morning, I woke up early and called my credit card company. I explained that there had been a fraudulent charge on my account, the watch purchase from 2 days ago. I told them my card must have been compromised, that I certainly hadn't authorized a $2,000 transaction. The representative was sympathetic and professional. She started the dispute process immediately, assuring me that the charge would be reversed pending investigation. I felt no guilt, no hesitation, just a cold satisfaction that finally, for once, there would be consequences. The fraud dispute would take a few days to process, but I knew my sister wouldn't discover it immediately. She'd be too busy enjoying her new accessory, showing it off to friends, posting pictures on social media. I went about my week normally, working, hitting the gym, meeting friends for drinks. I didn't reach out to my family. I didn't check in. I just waited. Sunday came, and with it, the monthly family brunch that my parents hosted. Another tradition, another gathering, another opportunity for my sister to take center stage. I almost considered skipping it, but I realized I wanted to be there. I wanted to see her face when reality caught up with her. I arrived at my parents' house right on time. The usual crowd was there, my parents, my sister and her boyfriend, an aunt and uncle, a couple of cousins. The dining room table was set with my mother's good china, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. Everyone was in good spirits, chatting and laughing as my mother brought out platters of food. My sister was wearing the watch. Of course she was. She kept adjusting it on her wrist, angling her arm so the light caught it just right, making sure everyone noticed it. She caught my eye across the table and gave me a little wave, that same condescending smile on her face. We'd just started eating when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and then her entire body went rigid. She picked up the phone and stared at the screen, her face draining of color. Then she stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. The table went quiet. My mother asked if everything was all right. My father continued eating, oblivious. I sipped my coffee and waited. When my sister came back, she looked shaken. Her hand was trembling slightly as she set her phone down on the table. She looked directly at me, confusion and anger warring on her face. She asked if I knew anything about a bank fraud notice regarding the watch. I looked up from my eggs, expression neutral, and asked what she was talking about. She explained that she'd just received a notification from her credit monitoring service. The watch purchase had been flagged as fraudulent and the charge was being reversed. The watch would need to be returned to the retailer. She'd received an email from the credit card company asking her to verify her identity and confirm whether she'd made the purchase. The table erupted in confused murmurs. My mother asked how that was possible. My father finally looked up, interested now. My sister's boyfriend shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My sister turned to me, voice rising, demanding to know what was going on. She asked if I disputed the charge. I told her calmly that I had. I explained that after thinking about it, I'd realized I didn't actually authorize that particular purchase. My card had been used without my explicit consent, so naturally, I reported it as fraud. The silence that followed was deafening. My sister stared at me like I'd grown a second head. She said I'd given her the watch as a gift. She said I'd wrapped it myself and put it under the tree. She said everyone at the holiday party had seen me give it to her. I shrugged and said that was true, but I'd reconsidered. I decided that the transaction didn't reflect my actual intentions, and I was well within my rights to dispute it. Credit card companies are very understanding about fraud, I added. They always side with the cardholder. My mother tried to intervene, asking if this was really necessary. My father told her to stay out of it. My sister's face was turning red, a mixture of embarrassment and fury. She started to argue, voice getting louder, saying I couldn't do this, that it was insane, that I was making her look like a criminal. I stayed calm. I said I wasn't making her look like anything. I'd simply exercised my right as a consumer to dispute a charge I deemed fraudulent. If she had a problem with that, she could take it up with the credit card company, or the retailer, or whoever else wanted to investigate the matter. My aunt, trying to be helpful, suggested this was all just a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a phone call. My sister latched onto that, saying yes, exactly, we could call the credit card company right now and straighten everything out. I told her I had no intention of calling anyone. The dispute was filed. The process was in motion. If she wanted to keep the watch, she'd need to purchase it herself. That's when she exploded. She screamed at me, calling me petty, vindictive, cruel. She said I was punishing her for making a joke, that I was acting like a child, that I was trying to humiliate her in front of the family. Her boyfriend tried to calm her down, but she shook him off. She stood there, shaking with rage, demanding I undo what I'd done. I set down my fork and looked at her. I asked if she remembered what she'd said at the holiday party. I asked if she remembered announcing to everyone that I always pay for everything, that I was the family ATM, that everyone was lucky to have me around to bankroll their lives. She stuttered something about it being a joke. I told her it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like contempt. It felt like she'd taken my generosity and thrown it back in my face for a few laughs. My father finally spoke up, telling us both to calm down. My mother looked like she was about to cry. The rest of the table sat frozen, unsure whether to leave or stay. I stood up and told my sister she could keep the watch if she wanted. All she had to do was pay for it herself. Otherwise, she could return it and deal with whatever consequences came from the fraud investigation. I told her I was tired of being treated like a wallet with legs, tired of being taken for granted, tired of watching her coast through life on other people's money while acting like she was doing us all a favor. Then I turned to the rest of the table and said that going forward, I wouldn't be funding anyone else's lifestyle. No more loans. No more bailouts. No more covering rent or credit card bills or whatever other financial emergencies came up. Everyone here was an adult, and it was time they acted like it. I grabbed my jacket and walked toward the door. My mother called after me, begging me to stay, to talk this through. I told her I loved her, but I was done being everyone's bank. I needed them to understand that my money wasn't a family resource to be distributed at will. My sister shouted something at my back, something about me being selfish and heartless. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. I drove home in silence, hands steady on the wheel, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone started buzzing almost immediately, texts from my mother, my aunt, my father. I ignored them all. Update 1. The aftermath was predictable and exhausting. My sister spent the next few days blowing up my phone with angry texts and voicemails. She called me every name in the book, accused me of sabotaging her, claimed I was destroying the family. I didn't respond to any of it. I just let her vent into the void. My mother called multiple times, crying, begging me to fix things. She said my sister was devastated, that I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone, that this wasn't how family treated each other. I listened patiently, and then explained that I was tired of being the only person in this family expected to tolerate disrespect. I asked my mother if she remembered all the times my sister had taken advantage of me, all the money I'd given her over the years, all the times she'd treated my generosity like an obligation rather than a gift. My mother went quiet. Then she admitted that yes, my sister could be difficult, but that's just how she was. She said I needed to be the bigger person, that I needed to let this go for the sake of family harmony. I told my mother I loved her, but I wasn't interested in family harmony if it meant being everyone's doormat. I said I hoped she could understand that, and if not, I'd respect her feelings, but I wouldn't change my mind. My father called too, but his message was different. He told me he understood why I was angry. He said he'd watched me let my sister walk all over me for years, and while he didn't necessarily approve of how I'd handled things, he got it. He said maybe this was the wake-up call she needed. Then he asked me to consider coming to the next family dinner, just to show there were no hard feelings. I told him I'd think about it. My sister eventually returned the watch. She had no choice. The fraud investigation made it clear she couldn't keep merchandise purchased with a disputed charge. I heard through my mother that she'd been forced to go back to the store and explain the situation to a manager, which had been humiliating for her. Part of me felt bad about that. Most of me didn't. She tried a different approach after that, sending me a long text about how hurt she was, how she'd always looked up to me, how she never meant to make me feel used. She said she was sorry if her joke had gone too far, that she'd just been trying to be funny, that she never imagined I'd react so strongly. I read the message 3 times before responding. I told her I appreciated the apology, but the issue wasn't just about one joke. It was about years of taking me for granted, years of assuming my wallet was always open, years of treating my financial support like it was something I owed her rather than something I chose to give. I said if she wanted to rebuild our relationship, it needed to be on different terms. No more asking me for money. No more expecting me to bail her out. No more making me the punchline of her jokes about family generosity. If she could respect those boundaries, we could move forward. If not, we'd need to keep our distance. She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, a day later, she said she understood and that she'd do better. Tom would tell if she meant it. Update 2. 3 months have passed since the watch incident. The family dynamics have shifted in ways I didn't entirely expect. My sister and I are speaking again, but the relationship is different. Cooler. More formal. She doesn't call me asking for favors anymore, and when we're at family gatherings, she keeps her distance. I don't know if she's genuinely changed or if she's just being careful around me now. Either way, the boundary is holding. My parents have accepted the new normal, though my mother still occasionally tries to guilt me into making things right with my sister. I've learned to let those comments roll off my back. My father has actually been supportive, which surprised me. He pulled me aside at a recent dinner and said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. He admitted he should have intervened years ago, that he'd watched my sister take advantage of me and said nothing because it was easier to keep the peace. The extended family mostly stays out of it now. A few relatives have quietly reached out to say they understood why I did what I did, that they'd seen the dynamic and felt uncomfortable with it for a long time. That validation helped more than I expected. My sister got a promotion at work recently, which has improved her financial situation. She's been making an effort to pay her own way, though I suspect part of that is to prove a point to me. I don't care about her motivation. I'm just glad she's taking responsibility for herself. The watch sits in a drawer in my bedroom now. The retailer eventually returned it to me after the dispute was resolved, saying they couldn't resell it as new. I haven't decided what to do with it yet. Part of me wants to sell it, to recoup the money and be done with the whole thing. Another part of me wants to keep it as a reminder of what happens when you let people take advantage of your kindness. I've made other changes in my life too. I've stopped saying yes to every request for help, stopped feeling guilty for having boundaries, stopped believing that being a good person means being everyone's solution to their problems. It's been liberating. My relationship with my family is better now, ironically. There's less resentment on my part, less entitlement on theirs. We interact as equals rather than as the designated fixer and the people who need fixing. It's healthier this way, even if it's not as close as it used to be. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it harsh? Probably. But sometimes people need a shock to understand that their actions have consequences. My sister learned that respect is a two-way street, and I learned that it's okay to prioritize my own dignity over family harmony. The watch incident broke something between us, but it also forced us to rebuild on more honest terms. I'll take that over fake harmony any day. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us.